Magic 97.7, there's music from Jada Grace. 8:35, on time, Mike Barrett. Not that you're not ever on time, but we timed it up pretty good.
Well, how can you not? You just, when the song ends, we go. That's what we do.
Well, sometimes it's 8:36.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Man, it's cold out there.
It is cold outside, but don't say baby it's cold outside.
Oh,
it's not allowed on the radio anymore, apparently.
I'm going to say it because everybody that called and talked to me about it says that's a classic Christmas song. That's all there is to it. All right, good policies with Barrett Insurance Agency. We always have great talks. It's a very complex world.
It is.
Of insurance.
Yeah.
All right, I got a question for you.
Go ahead.
I got a good question for you here. We live in Vermont.
That's not a question. That's a statement.
That is a statement leading into this here.
All right.
Okay, now insurance. Homeowners, renters, business owners, anybody, okay, here in Vermont would never, ever, 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 ever think about a devastating earthquake. Now, is that anything that you think about on a regular basis?
No.
Okay.
No, it's not.
But should we?
You always should, because what is insurance for? Insurance is there to cover the possibility of loss.
Okay, so
ask yourself, is there the possibility of an earthquake?
Of course there is.
Of course there is.
Like we've talked about in the past. You may not live in a floodplain, but you could experience a flood loss.
There is the possibility of flood loss.
So
absolutely.
Let's talk the shake, rattle, and roll.
Absolutely. So what brought me to think about this, of course, was the earthquake a couple of weeks ago in Alaska. And, you just never think it's going to happen, which is exactly, like I said, why insurance is there. You never think your house is going to burn down. You never think a flood's going to happen, and so on and so forth. There are certain things. Let's talk about just a regular homeowner policy for this example this morning.
Sure.
So regular, now I do have a frog in my throat. Thanks, Jeff. You jinxed me. So a regular homeowner policy is going to exclude loss due to flood, loss due to earthquake, and there's many other exclusions, but those are some of the big ones, okay? How can you cover yourself if those are excluded? Well, it's pretty simple. Most, and not all, but most homeowners insurance companies offer an endorsement for earthquake coverage. So you could actually specifically add coverage for earthquake to your homeowner policy. Now, the way that this works is rather than a deductible, and you, of course, can choose a $500 or $1,000 or more deductible for your homeowner's policy. Rather than that deductible being applicable to an earthquake loss, it's going to be based on a percentage of your limit of insurance.
Okay, so
what's that mean?
It's not a capped dollar amount, then,
no,
right?
No, just a different deductible. So in the case of mine, and yes, I have earthquake coverage in my house, and that's because I'm an insurance agent, and I should.
Pause just a second here. We have felt earthquakes recently.
We have.
Case in point, where I live, there was a drilled well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's a rental property, so it has to have that pipe that runs down through, right? We had an earthquake. It shook the ground enough that it ruptured the well, and we had some contaminants come into the well.
Oh, wow.
So it's not off the wall to think about it. So go on.
It can
earthquake.
happen. It can happen. So let's say you have a $200,000 limit of insurance on your house, and you have a $1,000 or maybe a $500 deductible, what have you, on your home. If you add earthquake coverage, you would have with some companies, it would be a 2% deductible. What's a 2% deductible mean? Well, if you have $200,000 coverage in your house, you would then have a $4,000 deductible. All right. And it's a percentage because it's based, of course, on the limit of coverage you have on your house. Some companies have a 5% deductible. 5% deductible would be a $10,000 deductible in your house. So those are pretty big deductibles. But with an earthquake, you're not looking to cover necessarily a tiny little loss. You're going to be looking to cover major damage to your home.
Everything that happens to it. So a $150,000 home. I want to make sure I understand this because I know somebody's thinking about this.
Sure.
Complex world of insurance. Okay, so if somebody has $10,000 on a $150,000 home, God forbid it is a total loss.
So if it's a $150,000 home and you have a 2% deductible, you're looking at $3,000.
Okay. That comes out of your pocket.
Yeah.
That's because this is an endorsement to an existing homeowner's policy.
Right. There are some other companies out there who offer what we call a monoline policy, where you can buy just an earthquake policy. That is available through a couple of carriers. Very similar to the carriers that offer monoline flood insurance. And that's kind of one of the big differences between earthquake and flood, not being covered on your homeowner. Like I said, many companies will let you add coverage to that existing policy through an endorsement, $70, $80, $90 a year to do so, but they do not offer the flood coverage where you would have to get that somewhere else. But it's something that you should consider, because if it's only $60, $70 a year, and I know I say only, it's not only, that's real money, but if it's $60, $70 a year, think about if you had that major earthquake that destroys your house.
Right.
So now you got a $200,000 loss. How many years would you have to pay a $60 or $70 premium to pay that amount?
I'm not whipping my phone out
I'm
for
not
the
either.
calculator on that.
But that's the thing to think about is that, you're really, it's insuring for the chance of, not the absolute knowledge that it will, the chance of.
Okay.
So if there's a possibility it could happen and you think you could afford the coverage, it's not a bad idea to think about adding that to your policy. Now, I will tell you that in the grand scheme of things, let's talk about this. Let's see. In the past year, I've only had one person choose to add earthquake coverage to their homeowner policy. So a lot of people are not all that concerned about it. Rightfully so. But we all say the same thing up here. We're lucky. We complain about the cold, we complain about the ice, we complain about the snow, but we don't necessarily have those devastating wildfires, the earthquakes, or those floods, although Irene would probably be a good reference to remind people that it can happen up here. But the probability is much smaller. So many people don't think about adding it, but it's something to think about in your head that, you should maybe just inquire.
Okay, here's a question then. Since we're talking about the incidences of odd chance that it might happen, right? And you talk about floods, we talk about earthquakes. What about, you said wildfires. What if there's a forest fire?
Sure.
Okay. Is that something that would the house, would that have to be considered a structure fire, or would that be considered, you see why I'm asking?
You want to know the beauty of it? Fire is fire is fire.
Okay.
So let's go back to the earthquake. Let's say an earthquake occurred and you don't have earthquake coverage. But say a fire resulted in the earthquake, and as such, the fire now destroyed your house. You have coverage for the fire. So even though the earthquake caused the fire caused the loss to your house, you're covered. But no, that's not necessarily a chance you want to take, but it is there.
Right, but that's the complexities of it. There are so many variables, and like we hear in your commercials all the time, the worst time to find out is when it happens.
The interesting part, too, is that your automobile insurance most likely, will. If you have comprehensive coverage on your auto insurance, flood and earthquake would probably be covered because they're not excluded.
Right.
Interestingly enough,
Makes
on
sense.
an auto policy. So you can at least live in your car if you lose your home to earthquake.
I've had somebody in a very high-ranking position tell me they didn't care if I lived in a box as long as I was living. So. All right, so good policies here. Have the conversation with your agent.
Yes, and can I just throw this out real quick? I meant to do it last week and I forgot. For the past 3-4 years, our office has been collecting toys and donations for the Northeast Kingdom Santa Fund, and we're doing that again this year. We have a Christmas tree set up at the office. We've had numerous people, very kind-hearted souls, coming in and dropping off toys. We're still collecting, I think, until next week. So if you are looking for a donation location, that's a nice way to say it. You can feel free to stop by our office. Of course, you can always stop by the other locations that pick it up, or you can go to the fire station, but we are collecting at our office. And we are located on Portland Street in St. Johnsbury. You can give us a call, 748-5224. Visit our website, thebarrettagency.com, Google, Facebook, and YouTube, all Barrett Insurance Agency.
And I'll tell you, my last chat that I had with the St. J Fire Department, there's 1,700 plus kids to take advantage of the Santa Fund.
It's huge. It's huge. And, it's something that I've been giving to since I was a little kid. Back when I was young, because I'm old, you could back in those days give gently used toys, because gently used toys were actually still good toys. Gently used toys these days are plastic wheels off, so you can't do that anymore. But.
You just described half my Hot Wheels collection.
Mine too.
All right, good policies on Magic, and we're going to get back to the music. We'll chat with Mike again next week. Here's